Was it trauma?
I'm going with yes.
Okay. Episode over. Life as a mom, entrepreneur, wife, friend, and human is a lot. Join me, Katie Jacobs.
And me, Brandy Chandler, every Thursday as we have unfiltered, hilarious, and relatable conversations about the ups, the downs, and the chaos of it all.
Pour a glass and pull up a seat.
Because you're always welcome at our table.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
What a run we've had.
We've just recorded 2 other episodes, so we are in it.
No, I'm talking about what's recently dropped.
Oh, yes.
We've had a lot of good.
Very good. I think those are great episodes.
Can we talk about the fact that your daughter just came in and said that her grandma says I have to watch my mouth?
Was it trauma?
I'm traumatized.
Did that traumatize
I'm
you?
traumatized your daughter.
And we didn't even care about the comment. We're like, she listens.
My mom can't figure out how to get the podcast up so I can curate what she listens to, which is really nice.
Stinker.
I know. She's like, can we listen to, if we're in the car, she's like, can we listen to an episode? And I'm like,
that was my next question. I was like, did you set the podcast up for her daughter?
Who is letting grandma listen is my question.
No, she's a fan. She loves it.
It's not what I just heard. I don't think I align with the value. All right. So today I wanted to talk about trauma. Is it trauma or is it a trying time? So welcome to She Did What? We're talking
She did it.
about the 3 T's, trauma or trying time. Because 2024 and employing young women, and it's just, I hear about a lot of trauma.
We experienced a lot of trauma this year and last year.
Was it trauma?
I'm going with yes.
Okay. Episode over. So the word trauma, I think, has been exhausted since basically 2020.
It's lost its value.
Everything that everyone experiences that's from minor inconvenience to like a big life event has become a trauma. And I think one of the frustrating things as a human in 2024 is like listening to people talk about these traumas. Mm. So I wanted to explore how to figure out and who decides, is it trauma or is it a trying time?
Let's do it.
Well, let's start where we like to start when we start an episode. We like to get academic.
The good old dictionary.
We love her. We love Mr. Merriam and Ms. Webster. Who is Merriam-Webster?
It was a person. Have you not watched? There are like some movies about that.
No, Brandy.
I
have not delved in.
They're like blockbuster hits.
About Merriam-Webster dictionary.
About how the dictionaries got started.
I can't think of anything I want to do less on my off time.
There really is a great book. And of course, I can't think of the title. Something like The History of Words or The History of Lost Words. No, it's on the edge of your seat. Fabulous. It's fiction. It's not.
Okay, well now you have a commitment to show notes.
I will show note it.
Now you have to show note whatever this TV show is or documentary.
No,
or
they're
whatever.
movies.
Okay, that one.
Somebody like Mel Gibson or somebody is in one.
I'm not buying.
I'm going to show note it up.
I'm not buying what you're selling.
Movies,
I feel like you're going to call
books.
me next week and be like, Kate, I can't find it.
No, I am totally.
Movies, books. Okay, so we love...
I'm going to buy a dictionary too.
What a sidebar. We love a dictionary because if we're going to talk about these topics, sometimes it's really important to define them. Mm-hmm. So basically, a trauma is in the way we're using it as a disordered psychic or behavioral state resulting from severe mental or emotional stress or physical injury. So, and the trauma, as explained by the CDC, is an event or series of events that cause a lot of stress. I don't love that one.
That one is the CDC. They phoned it in.
I know. It felt like my kid wrote that for the CDC. They're like, Hey, Griff.
They are in Atlanta.
True.
He could have been hired.
It would not surprise me. So CDC, not buying it. Also, I have found that much like anything else in this world, stress is relative, because someone who's very, very stressed out, it's like, how do you, it's like, okay, pain 1 to 10, where are you on the stress scale? So a lot of stress can be trauma. Okay. All right. Well, I was very, very stressed out that the barista got my coffee wrong this morning. I don't know. So I think it's interesting. So I'm thinking of like some big life events that you had in the recent past, you leaving a job that was high stress and emotional.
And connected to family.
And moving. Your father-in-law has been in the hospital. Me, having all of these life events, changing schools with my kids, closing a business, the election, and then my dad passing suddenly.
Cut the election for a minute.
Oh, yeah, that was stress.
It was.
Oh my gosh. And it's like, okay, so then I've started to think about like how much of this was just like a tough time, a trying time, and how much of it was traumatic. What are your thoughts? We'll start with our personal experiences here and grow.
So I feel like I have bad luck. So I've dealt with a lot of down in the dump situations. Just not like they just pop up in my life, and like I've had to deal with them. So that's just kind of where I'm coming from. When I was a teenager, early teenager, and my brother was 21, he was in a really bad car wreck. And so a month-long hospital stay, months and months of dealing with, like, we had a hospital bed in our living room once he came home.
Wow.
Because he broke both of his legs and had external fixators and stuff. So I had that big thing at like a very volatile.
How old were you?
I was 14.
Okay.
At a very volatile, it was the summer I was about to turn 15. So, right, 14, 15 time in my life, and I didn't know any better, like I was just dealing with it at the time as to what it was. But now in my 40s, finally, I can kind of see where that changed some stuff in my life and made my relationships with my parents and other family members and stuff like that. It really had a helping hand in that. So I think the difference between trauma and trying time sometimes is the time and how it affects you in the way aftermath.
So can you describe how it, like, looking back now, what do you think the effect was on that 14-year-old girl?
I don't know if I can identify everything, but I feel like a lot of my independence, which is a great strength, that came out of that. But I think it was developed by some of that. Some of our loyalty to our family and our family business was kind of ingrained from that time.
How so?
Just because we had a family business and we were fortunate enough to be able to keep it running while we did this. So our loyalty is really to, like, this thing has kept us going. Like, it's a great opportunity, a business where we can, have a big life event and deal with it and then still have the business. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, it really was put on a platform as an important thing.
That you were able to make it through that difficult time because this family business was sustaining
Yes.
your family's hardship.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was sustainable. Like, the business was fine and we were fine. Like, that's kind of hard to come by because a lot of people, they have, a spouse gets in an accident, you have to quit your job.
That's right.
To deal with them. So I feel like a lot of that issues, like, I'm still working through them.
So a lot of your loyalty and the difficulty with leaving your family business is tied up in all of this.
I think so. Yeah.
That makes sense.
I can just now see that 25 years later.
Do you feel like that was a traumatic experience for you?
Now, yes. Then, no. Like, when I was going through it, I mean, it was horrible, but like, we just dealt with it. But I'm kind of that kind of person, like, just pull up your shoestrings, bootstraps, and do what needs to be done. So it takes a long time afterwards for me to realize that might have been a little traumatic. I might still have issues from that.
Well, yeah. And the way your life, what were we talking about this in? The framing that
yeah,
we're creating a framework for our children right now. And it's how they're going to see the world.
Yeah.
It's the house they'll stand in. It's the lens they will look through
Mm-hmm.
for how they see the world. And I'm like, oh my God, how? And I think I think this will resonate with a lot of parents specifically. Oh my God, how bad am I screwing my kids up?
Yeah.
You know, how bad is this going to be? You know, I've thought about that a lot.
Their podcast on this.
Remember when my mom cried for 2 months straight after her dad died? It's, I think about that, and I've, you know, because we've had high tension in our house. We've had a lot going on. And actually I said it this morning because one of our kids had a meltdown last night. And I looked at JJ this morning. I was like, we have had so much tension and so much on our shoulders. I think, you know, last week we were wrapping up the sale of my dad's, we're still wrapping up the sale of my dad's business, which has been very complex. It just, there's been so much complexity to life on top of dealing with grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I keep thinking, and this is something I'm like, I'm actually thinking about this week, like I might need some therapy, because I keep going back to that moment of saying goodbye and taking my dad off life support. It's like a tape that won't stop playing. And I'm like, why is that happening? Why am I, and obviously things are fresh, but it's like, I'm replaying it over and over. So I'm thinking, I'm debating. And when I wrote this episode up, I was thinking a lot about that because I was like, my dad's passing. No, it wasn't traumatic. It was a trying time. But I'm like, I don't know. I think making this decision and holding a parent's hand while they pass is like, that feels like a trauma.
And I think a lot of it has to do with how long it sticks with you. You know, if you can get over it and not reflect on it and think about it much, I don't think it's that traumatic. But if you're, you know, still dwelling on it, and I'm not saying dwelling in a bad way, you know, but if it's still really present in the front of your mind, months, years, decades later,
sure,
I'm going to say that was trauma.
Yeah.
My expert opinion.
Well, and I just, you know, when tensions are high, when everything, you know, my mom moved in with us and there have been some tough moments there. And my mom is obviously deeply grieving. She had her 50th wedding anniversary last week. And it's like, my kids are experiencing all this too, because they're in the home.
But, you know, sometimes I'm like, is it really traumatizing in a bad way for the kids? Or is it showing them things they're going to have to deal with? Maybe helping them with some prep work? I'm on the fence about the traumatizing kids.
JJ said, because he talked to my meltdown kid this morning, and he said that they had a really good conversation. He had it with all the kids about what you do for family when times get hard and how you sacrifice your immediate needs and making things easier for yourself for the love of your family, you know, and that this is a good lesson in, but then it's like hearing what you said, it's like loyalty. Okay. Well, then are we creating a sort of unhealthy,
it's just like everything in life. You got to find that super fine line.
It's such a fine
balance.
line.
Oh, I said it.
You rascal. I'm not going to cuss. You rascal.
She's been banned from cussing. She's going to be so proud of you.
Oh, what's her name?
No, not going there. You almost got me.
Barbara, I'm going to keep it together for you.
It's not Barbara.
Hey, baddies. Did you know you can now become an official She Did What Baddie supporter on Patreon? We have 3 tiers of support, and with each one, you get exclusive content. We're talking unedited videos of Brandy and I are holding nothing back. You get access to short episodes such as Brandy interviewing me on my birthday, our take on the trad wife trend, and the very first time we ever tried to record an episode. And more are on the way. You get all of those episodes I just mentioned, plus a monthly catch-up episode where we talk about everything we love, loathe, are watching, reading, obsessed with, and what we're totally over. Plus, you get all the episodes, all the catch-ups, and a shout-out in the podcast credits as an executive baddie for the podcast. You'll be the first to hear news, events, and you'll be who we go to for polls and ideas. Go to the link tree on our Instagram page at Podcast She Did What to get straight to our Patreon and join today. You can also chat with us directly on Patreon. We can't wait for you baddies to see this extra content and enjoy the fun. I think we worry as parents so much. And we toe a lot of lines. There's a lot of lines we toe because we don't want to shield our children from the reality of life, because then they become an adult who's never
but
seen
you don't
anything.
Put
and then they're traumatized by everything, including their coffee not being
Exactly. Like, I would rather my kids have a taste of it through me dealing with it. And just, it's almost like watching. So they watched a TV show. So they're like, oh, these things happen in the world, instead of them just getting thrown in and blindsided.
Right.
That's kind of how I view it.
Right.
I'm just helping them.
I'm just ushering them into these new experiences.
I'm just helping them through their future traumas.
Well, and I think a lot of, I'm thinking about people I know that are like, oh, I never saw my parents fight. And they wear that like a badge of honor. I'm like, that's awesome. That's not who we are.
No.
But one thing that's really important for us is if our kids witness us in an argument or something like that, it's and not a fight.
Yeah.
If they witness an argument or a disagreement, that they also see us come back together, that people are going to argue and disagree.
Yes.
I'm not going to create. I have known people who never saw their parents argue and then are never happy in a relationship because they don't understand that people argue. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, they're like, wait, no, I'm going to be in a relationship where there's no conflict. And it's like, that's not an attainable.
Well, even some parents, save it and argue behind closed doors, which I think if you're going to get really heated, I think that's a great idea. But if you're just having a small disagreement discussion, I think it's fine for your children.
I think so too. And I think just as importantly, it's for them to see you come back together, to see somebody apologize, to see somebody make the effort, to see, oh, sometimes mom's going to come and make it right. Sometimes dad is. They're going to come back together and reconcile.
Because these things, even if your children never get married, these things happen at work, in the coffee shop, at a restaurant, in a store. They happen all over life. And if they never see examples of how to deal with it, how are they going to be able to deal with it?
Right now, I'm employing a lot of folks. I have a great team, and my team right now, I feel like, is one of my strongest. So I'm not speaking to my team, but over the past, 10 years, I'll speak to the last 10 years, the young people who have come up have been more and more 14 years, increasingly more averse to any trial or tribulation.
Oh, yes.
I really like people who I find have experienced some things in life, because they don't think twice about a retail floor.
Even like applying to college and things like that, most everyone, I'm not going to say everyone because I don't think you have to go to college, but a lot of people do. And some teenagers, that puts them over the edge. And I'm like, if you can't handle this paperwork,
just wait till the IRS comes on knocking,
are going to be bad. There are things we have to do that we don't like and are no fun, but that doesn't mean you don't have to do them.
That's right.
So that's
and it's not
traumatic.
A trauma.
Yeah.
It's life, baby. And you got to bootstrap it a little.
There are a lot of them.
It's hard. I think it's interesting to back out of it and think of the way like child psychology really developed. And it's like, even we're kind of in that, and we've talked about gentle parenting. So if you back up, like Dr. Spock was the first person to be like, hey, stop beating your kids or whatever. And
maybe not so hard on the spanking.
And our parents were like, or our parents were like, oh, yeah, stop beating your kids. Okay. All right.
And then it went extreme.
And then I think, it kind of, we got very into this. Like, in my opinion, there's also a major epidemic of over medicating children and over medicating ourselves, frankly, to keep the emotions at bay or to keep the child calm in situations where, frankly, no one should be calm at 8 years old. But I digress. We don't need to get into all that. But I do think that, in seeing the way, and we're sort of now the kids where everybody gets a trophy, that age is now 20, 22, 24. Yeah. And they are really struggling.
Hey, speaking of, I have a big issue. I don't know. This might be too deep for this podcast. But I feel like a lot of our young adults are buying their degrees. And then when they can't deal with the jobs that they get, or they think they're not getting paid enough, or the job is too hard, I think that a lot of that has to do with, like, you can just keep paying and go to school and get through school.
So continuing to get more and more educated to try to avoid a job or real life?
A little bit, but also that the programs, the universities, and I don't think this is happening at like huge universities, but a lot of the smaller colleges, this is business to them.
Yeah.
They don't care about your life. You know, they're there to make money.
We might need the University of Phoenix to sponsor an episode. So I want you to calm down.
If you can pay, you can get a degree.
That's right.
You can be failing everything and you still get a degree because nobody's asking to see your GPA.
You're talking about those kinds of universities?
I'm talking about a lot of universities.
Okay. That's fair.
I've seen, as someone who's hired people fresh out of college, I've seen people that they've gone through 4 years of college or 2 years of college and they know no more than a freshman in high school.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And
yeah.
I think there's something wrong with the whole system, like setting, and like, it's not really a next step. Just because you're enrolled in college doesn't mean you're preparing for the next steps. You know?
I could not agree with that more. I think you and I align very much on the subject of higher education. I think you and I both feel like we would be very happy to watch our kids go into a trade or go do, go farm or do something they love. And I mean, probably need an ag degree to go farm, or, if you've been growing up, on a city block most of your life, like my kids. But it's, you don't need it.
I just think just different experience with things. Experiences with traumas and trying times, if you can step back and think about them and learn from them, it's really valuable.
Mm-hmm. I do know a lot of people that crumble under the slightest pressure. In fact, this is so funny. The opposite happened yesterday. I have an employee who I adore, and I watched this guy we were all turning left onto the street where the business is to, she was opening, I was opening, and I don't know what car she drives, so I didn't realize I was behind her and another vehicle. And this vehicle all of a sudden just, I'm like, did that just happen? He just turns into her, crashes into her. Most 22-year-olds that I know, 21-year-olds, would be having an absolute meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
So I whip in, I go down to her car. I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, dude, I'm fine. She's so even keeled.
She's been through the trauma.
And I mean,
this is nothing.
No, I mean, I don't know what she's been through. She's actually a very private person, which I love too. I love when they're private. I don't know a lot about her background. She's not an open book like that. So, but she just took it in stride and was like, damn, here's, another thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, I was like I was refreshed that she took it in stride.
Yes.
And she did not fall apart, and she did not lose her mind, and it didn't affect her. No, I mean, she came in and worked
on to everyone else the rest of the day. Yeah.
And I've had people experience much less and have to call in, and they're sobbing and they're out of control because they have a flat tire, and I'm like, dude, it's a flat, get an Uber. I don't know what to tell you.
I get flat, I call my husband.
I have AAA.
I just sit there until he comes.
But there are some people who are completely unequipped, and I have a family member who is completely unequipped to handle life. Yeah. And as a grown person, and it's hard to witness, because you watch them just sort of victimize themselves as everything's a trauma, and they victimize themselves, and it's like, guess what, pal? Yeah. Ain't nobody gonna come save you. Yeah. This one's on you. You got to dig your way out of this, and then start living with a purpose. And I think part of that is living with purpose, having a purpose, if you want to dive a little deeper on it. But which I actually really want to talk about purpose. I think it's such an important topic for everybody,
said that
every age
today.
And I feel very strongly about it. Do you think in this trauma mentality, and speaking kind of to piggyback off of what I just said, That the overuse is sort of creating this victim mentality.
I think so.
That everything's a trauma. And I acknowledge your trauma.
Yeah. And I feel like we're going through this with our teenager right now. Like, I can say something sarcastically and she can say something sarcastically and it doesn't come off the same because I'm older. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? I don't even have a good example I can think of.
Like you're coming off with real sarcasm and she's not hitting a note? I don't get it.
Well, just sometimes, a teenager can't be sarcastic about the same things an adult can be sarcastic about just because of the age and the phrase of life or phase of life. And I feel like it's like that, like not getting your coffee order right. Not traumatic. Not even trying time.
I was pissed that someone got my coffee order wrong on Saturday, the morning of my dad's celebration.
It's a disappointment.
Well, I had gone hiking and I was like, I'm going to go treat myself to a Starbucks. And it was I don't like super sweet coffee drinks. And it was a white chocolate mocha with whipped cream. And I was like,
bummer. When they get it wrong. But it's not trauma. And it's not even a trying time.
I'm going to talk to my therapist about it. But I think it does create, I'm asking the question because it does create a victim mentality. Yeah. And then everybody else is always wrong. Uh-huh. And then there's no gratitude.
That's what I was going to say. Maybe we need to go back to all the things we need to be grateful for instead of focusing on all the disappointing things.
Life is going to be disappointing.
One big bag. One big bag.
You said earlier, I have bad luck. And I think you've just experienced life.
Yeah. I mean, I've experienced a lot of things gone wrong.
Right.
And yeah. I would really only, sitting down right now on the, spur of the moment, I can only think of like 2 traumas.
Yeah. Yeah, I can too.
So
I probably only have a couple.
Yeah.
Like real ones. But I do think so. There is this sort of chain link that connects this ideology, and it's everything is a trauma. I am the victim. I need, I think I sent you this, and I need you to validate my trauma.
Yes.
That's the other piece of the puzzle that I can't quite wrap my head around. I either save this or I send it to you. And it was someone talking about grieving. And they were like, instead of asking someone how, after they've lost a loved one, how they're doing, you need to ask them a more specific question. This is like a doctor. And they're like, you can't ask them that question. That's too big for them to answer. And I was like, this is the dumbest, I'm sorry, Grandma. This is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. How dare you decide what someone else communicates? You know what?
Yeah.
Good on them for even asking the question to someone grieving, because most people run to the hills when they see someone grieving because it's scary.
I think the validation thing really stems from wanting to feel seen and to feel like you're not the only person that's going through this. But that doesn't mean
find a group.
Yeah.
Find a group.
Yeah.
Not everybody has to validate what your perceived trauma is in order for you to have a human experience. And to take it a step further, not everyone has to say everything right all the damn time.
I'm scared to tell you when I'm having a bad day now.
Why?
You're in it right now.
Well, no, I hate that people have started deciding they're going to dictate how other people react. And maybe I'm a little my brother and I are grieving my dad's loss very differently. And he is not okay with the way I operate. And it's been very frustrating for me because I feel like I have acknowledged the fact that he is deep in a grief that is different than mine, but he refuses to let me have my space.
Yeah.
But to take it a step further, I don't expect anyone to say anything a certain way. If you're asking or giving me a kindness, or how dare I feel so entitled to other people's emotions and verbalizations that I'm going to start to decide the way people should communicate with me. Mm-hmm. How entitled have we become as a society?
Yeah, I think that's a good word for it. Entitled.
So that's, again, going back to this chain link. So then I need to be validated. You better talk about my grief the right way. Mm-hmm. Or I have a right to feel victimized. I have a right to be traumatized. No.
Yep.
Someone's giving you a kindness of asking how you're doing. You know,
I think it's
accept
just
that kindness.
your framework and your mental, where you're coming from. Like, are you coming from somewhere where it's automatically, oh, that's so nice of somebody to ask how I'm doing? Or are you coming from, this person's just out to get me, you know? And I think that it goes a lot deeper than the actual trauma or trying time situation, I think.
Well, I don't even think it's this person's, and yeah, maybe this, but this person is not understanding my trauma, or this person is not respecting my grief.
Yeah.
No, that has nothing to do with it. They were probably nervous to approach you, and they're doing their best.
We all say the wrong things.
We do, but we're trying. You know, we're all trying. You know, and that's the human experience. But you can't, once you victimize yourself, and then you become a victim of everything, and then things really start to erode, because then gratitude's gone. And once gratitude's gone, I get really worried about people, because if you can't figure out what's so good about this life, you're just existing.
Yeah. And sometimes, like, there are days when I have to just sit down and say, okay, think of something that you are grateful for.
Yep.
Because you are spiraling out of control right now. So I feel like it's normal to not automatically go into grateful mode. But I think it's so helpful when you can sit down and say, okay, I've got a roof over my head, food in my belly, you know, just the simple things can really help you put everything else into perspective.
I feel like I'm working hard to train myself to make gratitude more of a default, because I don't think
I think it's work.
It is work, but I don't think we're conditioned. I don't think the world right now is it's a place of, you are traumatized. Let's talk about your trauma. It's not a place where we're conditioning people like, let's talk about how good you have it. Let's talk about what we need to be grateful for. Let's talk about, you know, all the goodness that does, because it's easy to get down, and it's easy to be inundated by the negativity and to victimize yourself right now, and to feel that you need validation in the victimhood and your trauma. The easy way is generally, you know, I found in life, like, the hard way is a much more fulfilling path. Yeah. Period. End of story.
Yep. That's
the easy way is an easy way for a reason. You know?
I know. I don't always do it, but I know.
and I also want to hold space for it. Real trauma needs all of the things. I'm not trying to trivialize real trauma. Real trauma needs work and care and help and therapy in many cases.
And
time. It needs to be seen in some cases for people to. So I'm not trying to trivialize that. I'm just saying there are a lot of people who have started to take this word and bastardize it.
Yeah.
In order to use it to take the easy way out.
I agree.
And gosh darn it, it's not good.
I think that's why we need to be a place of gratitude and joy, Katie.
And I think we need to work on the next generation. Because when my kids are like, oh, you know, oh, I'm done. I cut off from playing, you know, video games, or, oh, I have to go do this. I have to go do chores. It's like, hey, dude, you got it pretty good.
Mom had to do big girl things today too.
You got it pretty good. JJ made Johnny Lee pull weeds yesterday. He was so mad. I was like, wow. Are you going to make it through?
But I've also noticed, speaking of the children and stuff like that, the more I have them do stuff like that they necessarily don't want to do or feel like isn't their responsibility, the more we do it, the easier it gets. And the more they say, hey, how can I help? You know, is there something I can do to help? And that's, I think, what we're after. That's what we're going for instead of the complaining. And it's just changing that mindset.
It's all mindset work. I mean, really and truly.
Just take some practice.
It's knowing where the line is between you need to toughen up and
yes,
oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. How can I support you?
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying I would never do that with anyone except my children.
You're saying you would or you wouldn't?
I don't think I'd tell my friend, like, you need to toughen up.
Well, I think sometimes our friends my friends will call me like all stressed out about something. And I'm like, you don't need to be stressing about this.
Well, that's different. You're not telling them to toughen up. You're like, this is just, you're going to make it through.
Well, maybe.
I'm not calling you my next stress day.
I think, I mean, it's totally case by case.
I call one of my friends. I was having like a pretty big meltdown. Not meltdown. I was actually completely composed. I was like, I just need to say this out loud. This is what's going on. And I'm freaking out. And I kind of said it like that. And she was like, okay, what do you need? She's like, yeah, that's a big deal. What do you need? And I was like, I just needed to kind of say it out loud because I feel like I've just been holding it in and I've been going through every day like it's a normal day and working out, getting my kids ready for camp and coming to work and smiling and making sure I'm not making anybody uncomfortable. And I'm very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And, she was great. She was just like, okay, I'm here for you, And I think there is, when you're 41, when you're Brandy and I's age, something to consider if you're younger is to understand that we are going through some very real stuff. And so, we say this to our kids a lot. Read the room, know your audience.
Yeah.
Read the room.
And also, I think as a younger person, maybe something I didn't pick up on is, how we deal with it now is going to stay with us. Like how we respond now, we're going to be dealing with that still 10, 20 years down the road.
Can you be specific?
Just like how, my father-in-law's in the hospital right now. Mm. We try to take the kids to see him as much as possible. We're trying to be as helpful as possible. And I think we're going to reflect on that 10, 20 years on the road. I'm so glad we were there for him.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so glad the children, got to spend as much time as possible. What if we were difficult and we're like, oh, I don't have time for that. And then, he's going to pass away eventually, and then we would be like, oh, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have been there for them. I wish I would have been nicer and more helpful. So that's why I think you're going to deal with your responses later. It's not just in the moment. So, be thoughtful and try to be as wise as you can in how you're responding.
I think back when my grandfather was dying of cancer, my grandparents were the most incredible people. I miss them like crazy. And I would leave work, and I think about this a lot when I make this specific turn in downtown Athens, because they would be on my mind every day when my grandfather was dying. And I just always would be like, I need to call them. But I was really scared to pick up the phone. I don't know why. I think I was worried my grandfather wasn't going to be feeling good. I think I was worried, and I really wish I would have been less fearful and just done that, because it would have brought them a lot of joy. I think it would have, in hindsight, it's something I think about obviously a lot. And I think I would have been prouder of myself for doing the right thing and not being scared. But we can't go back. All we can do is put it on a podcast and hope somebody else gains something from it.
Learn from our mistakes.
I just want to close the practice by saying, if you are younger, to maybe be thoughtful about what people, Brandy and I have talked about a lot of what we've been through in the last couple of years and, outlined really quickly here. But it's important, I think, to be thoughtful about, know who you're complaining to, know who your audience is. And, and just be thoughtful. I think one of the themes that comes up over and over in our episodes is be kind, be thoughtful, be introspective, understand the world around you. Yeah. And it'll just make, these are simple ideas or simple practices. We're not asking you to follow a 10-step program,
If you have one, maybe suggest it to us.
We'll link it in show notes.
Oh, yeah.
I could use a 10-step
That's
program.
Definitely, being kind and thoughtful is just, yeah.
I think it solves half of this.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think if I would have been more kind and thoughtful in my younger years, maybe I would be a nicer person now.
You're a nice person.
I'm just saying, I think it could have been helpful.
You're a very kind person.
Maybe.
You are.
Ask Josh.
We're getting these guys. You know what? When I told people we're going to have some guests, they're like, are they your husbands? We got to get the guys on the podcast.
Maybe.
Because I don't know what's going on behind your doors, but I want a glimpse.
I'm scared for Josh to reveal. Ooh, maybe we should have our best friends. That would be interesting.
Well, one of mine is coming on as an expert.
Oh, yeah. But we have her talking about specific things, not about Katie.
Well, hopefully she's not.
She's like, this one client.
She calls me a lot. Her name rhymes with 80.
Yeah. And I think, trauma trying time, like I said, I think for me, it's been the hindsight and the time will tell you if it's trauma or trying time. Sometimes it's not an immediate answer. Some things, yes, coffee, bad, trying time. Not even trying time, just a disappointment.
Minor disappointment.
It's just a daily disappointment.
Yeah, I think so. I think time will time heals and time reveals a lot.
Or maybe that. Ooh, this just hooked in my head. My daughter's 5th grade teacher was fabulous. Like, it was like she was meant for my daughter specifically, because my daughter gets stressed super easy.
Overachiever.
Yeah, and she would tell her, "Are you going to be stressed about this in a year?" And if the answer's no, we don't stress about it right now. We just let it go.
That's really good business advice I got. The same advice.
Yeah.
What a great teacher.
I mean, she's amazing. I love her. So, yeah, I think that's a great trauma trying time. Is it trauma? Are you going to be thinking about this in a year? Yeah, might be trauma.
That's also a very quick practice, a quick gut check on how much do I need to stress about this?
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm not even going to be thinking about it in a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year,
let it go.
Let it go. Ain't worth it.
Adios,
amigo.
Yeah. That's a good one.
So.
That's all we got.
That's what we got on this one.
Solved the problem.
The problems we solve here on this podcast. You're welcome, audience.
We might run for the next president of the United States. We could be a joint ticket.
We could. The first joint ticket. Look at these two dum-dums.
They're like, what are you going to do? I don't know.
We're going to talk to people. We're going to sort stuff out.
Oh,
We're going to pass bills. Really quickly, if you are enjoying this podcast, please go rate, review, subscribe, like, click, link, love, and share us with 5 of your besties that you think would love the podcast and know how to locate a podcast. That's half the battle.
Or help them if they need
Or just
the
send
help.
them a link directly to listen.
And if you really, really love us, you can get on Patreon. There's even more content. That no one else can get.
Catch-ups, uncut episodes, full episodes. It's a great place to...
Trauma. No trauma.
No trauma. And no drama.
Nope. We are trauma free.
So thank you for listening. We hope y'all are having a fabulous week, and we will see you again next week. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and can't wait to share another episode with you next Thursday.
Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. To keep up with the latest, make sure to follow us on Instagram at Podcast She Did What. We'll be sharing updates, behind the scenes, and announcements you won't want to miss.
And if there's anything you'd like to share with us, whether it be a personal story or feedback on our episodes, you can leave us a voicemail at 762-499-2201 or head over to our website, shedidwhatpodcast.com. Also, feel free to leave us a review down below. We'd love to know what you think.
She Did What is hosted by us, Brandy Chandler and Katie Jacobs, and produced by Studio D Podcast Production.
Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next Thursday. And remember, it isn't always easy, but it sure as hell can be entertaining.